There once lived a man who climbed higher than ambition could ever reach. He did not seek power or applause. He climbed not for a view of the world, but to leave the world behind. Though they called him mad, though they begged him to come down, he only bowed and prayed. And from that high perch for nearly 4 decades, Saint Simeon Stylites touched the earth, without ever stepping on it again. This is his story, the story of the Spire Saint, the man who turned a pillar into a pulpit, and the sky into his cloister. Simeon was born around the year 390 in the borderlands between the Eastern Roman Empire and the Syrian deserts. A shepherd's son, he was raised in the small village of Sis near the modern-day border of Turkey and Syria. His world was simple: fields, flocks, and the faint echoes of collapsing empires. But even as a child, he was different. Not rebellious, not loud, but hungry. Hungry for something beyond bread or olive oil. At age 13, he heard the Beatitudes read aloud in church. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. That one line shattered his sleep. He began to fast, days at a time. He would tie a rope around his waist to tame the cravings. And when he finally walked into a monastery, they were not sure if they were welcoming a saint or something else entirely. At the monastery of Toledo, the brothers watched as Simeon pushed past every known ascetic limit. He barely ate, he slept on rocks, he prayed until he bled. He lived like every moment was borrowed. But the other monks, afraid and amazed, asked him to leave. Not out of cruelty, but because he made their lives feel ordinary. So Simeon left. He walked east into the desert. He found a rock, then a cave, and then an idea came to him. What if the soul could rise like smoke? What if the body could vanish from distraction? What if one man could climb toward heaven, one stone at a time? In the dry hills near Telenissa, modern-day Deir Saman, Simeon found a ruined stone column beside an abandoned structure. Not a grand tower, just a weather-worn relic of forgotten architecture. He cleaned it, stacked rocks at its base, and began to climb. The first pillar was 6 feet tall, just high enough to keep the world at a distance. Then 10 feet, then 20. Eventually, he built one nearly 50 feet into the air. No ladder, no shelter, just a rope and a basket. People from nearby Antioch and Aleppo thought he had gone mad. Others whispered he had become something more than man. Each day he prayed for hours, bowing so frequently, some said his back grew crooked. He ate nothing but barley, bread, and rainwater. When it snowed, he stood. When it burned down under the Syrian sun, he stood. No tent, no curtain, no complaint. To modern eyes, it is almost unbearable to imagine. But Simeon was not trying to impress. He was trying to disappear into the divine. Yet the higher he climbed, the more the world followed. At first it was farmers and herders, then sick children, then grieving parents, then nobles, then bishops, then even emperors. By the 420s, people came from across the Roman East to see the stylite, from the Greek stylos, meaning pillar. Simeon Stylites, the man who turned a monument into a monastery. The bishop Theodoret of Cyrus, one of the era's most respected theologians, recorded his life with both awe and suspicion. Even Emperor Theodosius II and Empress Aelia Eudocia sent messengers to the base of the pillar, requesting prayers and seeking wisdom. But Simeon spoke little. He would answer questions shouted from the crowd. He would lower blessings in a basket, sometimes healing oil, sometimes bread. But mostly he stood and prayed. People shouted praises. He answered with silence. A woman once tried to climb the pillar, and so he had a small platform built around it, just wide enough to prevent her from reaching, not out of hatred, but to protect the silence he had been fostering. And yet, ironically, his stillness stirred more than any sermon. They began to call the place Kalat Siman, the fortress of Simeon, a holy site, a marvel, a movement. He had fled into the wilderness for silence, but now Simeon lived above a murmur that never stopped. Crowds camped at the base of his pillar. Priests recited liturgies below. Merchants sold food and trinkets to pilgrims hoping for a glimpse. He had become famous for not wanting to be seen. It was not what he wanted, and yet he did not come down. Some say he wrestled with temptation, not of flesh, but of pride. To be seen as holy is its own danger. But Simeon guarded his soul by withdrawing deeper inward. He refused to let women approach the pillar, not from hatred, but because the mere risk of distraction could ruin everything. He added a short wall to the top of the platform, not for protection from the elements, but to block his view of the admiring crowd. He slept curled away in prayer. He wept in secret. He asked his disciples to rebuke him if he ever grew arrogant. One even spit on the base of the pillar at his request, to remind him what he truly was: dust. And yet there he remained. 30, then 35 years passed. He missed seasons. Empires rose and fell around him, but the man atop the pillar stayed, rooted in eternity. Stories began to spread that those who touched the base of the pillar were healed, that Simeon could read thoughts shouted from the crowd, that his prayers cured the blind and paralyzed, even that demons fled when his name was spoken. But the miracles were not flashy. They were quiet, like him. A Roman official once mocked him from below. Simeon responded with a single word, and the man fell speechless for days. Birds landed on his shoulders and did not flee. A snake once coiled around his legs in the night. He did not stir, he only whispered a prayer, and it slipped away. One woman who had suffered for years was brought by her family. Too weak to speak, they laid her near the pillar. In the morning, she rose and walked home. He gave no sermons, and he wrote no books, but he preached more by standing still than most did by shouting. The church did not know what to do with him. Some bishops called it madness. Others called it divine imitation. Was this a new way of monasticism, or something altogether more ancient? Eventually, the crowds no longer needed an explanation. They came not just for healing, but because in a loud, restless world, there was still one man who listened. He died still standing, not with ceremony, not surrounded by cardinals or kings, just wind, sky, and birds. It was the year 459. They say no one noticed at first. He had been still for so long that stillness itself no longer signaled anything. But when the rope was pulled and no basket came down, a disciple climbed the pillar and found him folded in prayer. He had lived there for 37 years. His body was taken down gently, wrapped in linen, wept over by crowds. Some say the emperor himself ordered his remains brought to Antioch. But no horse would carry him. Only when they walked barefoot did the procession move. The church canonized him quickly, not because he fit the mold, but because he broke it so beautifully. And others followed. The Stylites, pillar saints, spread across Syria, Palestine, Armenia, each building their own silent towers. Men who preached with posture, not words, who lived so high up the noise of the empire never reached them. His column became a shrine. A basilica was built around it. Its ruins still stand today. Even now the desert holds the outline of his cell. And the wind sings where he once stood. Not everyone understood him, but none who saw him ever forgot. If Simeon lived today, they would call him unstable. They would offer him therapy. They would say he was wasting his life. They would tell him to come down. But Simeon never lived for the crowd. He lived for the one who sees in secret. In a world of noise, he chose silence. In a world of platforms, he chose a pillar. In a world where fame is chased, he was chased by fame and ran higher. You do not need a 50-foot column to follow God. You need 50 seconds of quiet, 50 breaths of surrender, 50 days of waking up to the voice that whispers, "Be still and know that I am God." Maybe Simeon climbed not to escape the world, but to love it better from afar, to see it as heaven sees it. Small, beautiful, broken, and worthy of prayer. And maybe, just maybe, we all need our own pillar. A place to go to rise above distraction, to speak less and listen more.